It's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation. And this podcast is brought to you by the good people at Pure Rolling Papers, the healthiest rolling papers on earth. Made from their award-winning blend of organically sourced hemp and bamboo fibers. Their easy-to-roll 3-in-1 packs include their patented rolling papers, filter tips, as well as a rolling tray, as you see right here, made specifically for smokers on the go. So the old days of rolling blunts while on the go and breaking down high-quality cannabis in the hands is thing of the past. The pack comes with everything you need. All you gotta do is add trees. It's 2021, so step into the future with Pure. And for a limited time, you also have a special deal for all listeners of Cash Color Cannabis podcast. You get 15% off any products site-wide when you type in Cash Color Cannabis at checkout. So definitely check out Pure Life. And without further ado, I have a super new guest to the building. Like absolutely new, never been to the building before, never been on the show before in our 6 years of existence. Yoshi, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Definitely. I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
No doubt. I'm glad you hit me up because you talk about some last minute stuff. Like I was right before I was about to book my guest, you just sent me a DM and I was like, hey, I'd much rather have somebody brand new on the show than somebody I've already had on. So thank you so much for joining us today.
For sure. Yeah, Atlanta's been great. This is my first time here, so.
In Atlanta?
Yes.
She was shocked that I've never been to Arizona. This is your first time in Atlanta.
Yes.
Oh, girl, come on. We got to get you back here more. Before we get into everything that is you and what makes you great, first off, how was Afropunk?
Afropunk was incredible. You know, it's just this huge, it has its own legacy, right? I live in the DC area, and all the creators I'm around, a lot of people who make music, they're like, you haven't been to Afropunk in Brooklyn? Like, do you exist? You know what I mean? But Afropunk Atlanta was like this beautiful like recognition of how creativity is just so fluid.
Yo, give us a brief recap because I've never been, and actually now I feel like, so do I not exist? I have never been to Afropunk.
You have to go.
Yeah, I felt bad because actually when I saw Wale perform, and I'm not the biggest Wale fan, but he brought out Roscoe Dash, and Roscoe Dash has been on the show, and I was like, yo, that's so dope to see Roscoe and Wale back together and kicking it like that. But so yeah, give us a good recap. Like, what was your feelings about the show?
I was freaking out because day one, CeeLo Green showed up and performed a little bit, and so did T.I. and T.I.'s son.
Oh, Damani, Damani killed it from what I saw.
Yeah, so it was, for me, that was like, yes, I'm definitely in Atlanta. Yeah. This is it for me.
That's what's up.
So that was incredible. And Rico Nasty is like, boom, like bloom. Like my whole head exploded. It was the most amazing thing I ever seen. She was absolutely incredible.
I'm the biggest fan of Rico Nasty. Like I love Rico. Like
yeah.
I feel like she's so out the box. She reminds me, she doesn't remind me a lot, but her and Azalea Banks, I'm really shocked that we don't accept both of them more when it comes to black culture. Like they both bring so many they both bring in different style, but it's like, yo, it's so absurdly black. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like really we need to wrap our arms around both of them.
Yeah, I think it's a little tricky for female artists sometimes because it seems like there's a little bit of the standard, the things that people that are easy to accept, right?
Yeah.
Are these really like, when it's extreme, it's like a kind of a prissy extreme rather than like an emotional or like an assertive or aggressive without being decorated like Nicki Minaj.
I think you hit something right there because seriously, when it comes to women in rap, either you got to be super sexy or you got to be super hardcore lyrical. You know what I mean? Like how they often make the comparison of, well, y'all got Nicki Minaj, y'all didn't listen to Bahamadia. Like it's either like one or the other. Like we can't, for some reason, we don't like a middle.
Yeah, but I feel like they really do offer that, and Santa Gold too is one of those artists.
Oh yes,
you know? Absolutely incredible. Like it's eclectic and it's interesting, but it's still really black. It's super cultural. Like culture.
You know, I'm loving right now too. She out of the UK, Shabo. I love her. Like
I don't know who that is.
Check her out.
Is she like one of those grime, like one of those UK grime?
Yeah,
ladies?
but she's so hard with it. Like. I actually I'm from Boston. I love hearing, I always felt like dancehall and rap like were the same thing. Like, I always wanted to hear more dancehall and rap together. And people like her blend it perfectly. And it's like, I love her, man. But.
Yeah. You know, I'm crazy about DJs. I love DJs because they have this way of like doing, I don't want to say what Kanye does, but they sort of immortalize black music in a way, you know? And there's this DJ out of Toronto named Bambi, and her family's from the UK. That's what made me think of her. And she's Jamaican, but she's like absolutely incredible. Like you gotta hear her do a set, you know, and just really see this like really beautiful mix of being feminine and like having this like really strong hold on like the balls of music.
That's solid, man. Well, it sounds like you had a great time at Afropunk. I should go one year You know, like this. That's how I feel right now. I really need to go one year. All right, so let's talk about cannabis for a second.
For sure.
When was the first time that you consumed cannabis, and what was it like?
I was in college, and
What was that like last year?
might as well have been. Don't ask me how long ago. I'm not gonna age myself. But no, I was in school, and it was an experience. It was an experience, you know. It definitely shaped my relationship that I have with cannabis now, right? Because so much of like the work that I'm trying to pilot is centered around transforming some of that relationship between Black people, women, cannabis, and like some of the negative, the dark side of cannabis, you know? Everybody has, I don't know anyone who's ever consumed cannabis who doesn't have a story of like, man, I was paranoid, I was tripping or something. You get to this edge of like beyond well-being. And I feel like there's this beautiful blossoming that's happening, especially with Gen Z, right? Like it's not, cannabis isn't always like the party girl, you know what I mean? You can sit back, you can relax, there's so much great work being done. The cannabis doula, you know, you can really be in your absolute peak of wellness and enjoy cannabis. And for me, that's almost an antithesis to like this war on drugs, like underground, like we're gonna get high, man, like smoking weed in school.
You know, it's crazy. You mentioned about how all of us had a paranoid moment. Like as you said that, I thought about my paranoid moment because it flashed back immediately. I was in New Orleans, and if you've ever been on the French Quarter and it gets real packed at night, especially during 4th of July, during Essence Fest and things like that. And I remember it was the first time I actually smoked, and this girl from California I met, she passed me some chronic. And I remember smoking that, and I remember getting so high and walking with myself down the French Quarter, excuse me. And I was trying to catch up with my homies. And I remember walking, and I kept feeling like somebody was talking to me. Mm-hmm. And I remember yelling out loud, "Y'all ain't gonna get me tonight!" And I just ran down the street like full speed, like I'm just running down 4th Quarter and French Quarter, and nobody's saying nothing to me. But I knew that moment, that was my paranoid high moment.
Yes.
That was my paranoid high moment.
Yes, and there's just this beautiful I don't want to run too far ahead. But I just think there's this beautiful intersection between like identity and those feelings of safety, you know, harm reduction. I've been following more so the psychedelics community because cannabis is a psychedelic, right? But it's kind of like the little black baby of the psychedelics.
Yeah, we're not talking about mushrooms or even LSD. You talking about
yeah, but cannabis is a psychedelic. You're having a transformative psychological experience, right? And what does paranoia mean for a Black mom versus a white mom? You know what I mean? Because we're dealing with completely different ways of living. You know what I mean? And it goes down to masculinity, manhood, and feelings of security, safety, and stability, and still being able to enjoy cannabis. And I feel like somebody's got to shake the table on that because where I live in Virginia, cannabis was just legalized the 1st of July.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah. And it's been like, what? This is not illegal? Like, I can fully enjoy this? What does this mean? What does this mean? You know? But you have places where psychedelics are now a part of the now we're legalizing mushrooms and all different kinds of psychedelics. And you know, on the West Coast especially, or especially like in certain other countries. And it's just this really interesting intersection between like, well, how do we keep Black people safe? And how do we elevate Black people's experience?
Yeah.
And what does it mean to have a high-end cannabis experience and be a Black woman or a Black man, or where you maybe want to stay you don't want to come out the green closet. You like it in there. You know what I mean? But you want to be able to feel good about cannabis consumption. Maybe you don't want to be referred to as a stoner. Maybe you're not even about that stoner life. You don't like it. You like cannabis. You don't like the stoner thing. You know, there are so many different beautiful stories that are ready to like really take on a cannabis lifestyle in a new way, in a fresh way.
That's awesome. So what led you into the business of cannabis?
I had just my marketing skills. I work, my day job is in tech.
Okay.
So I work in software, and there's just this really cool intersection between like understanding the psychology behind people, which is something I've always been passionate about. I used to work in fashion, so it's really about reading people's minds, essentially, you know, and especially in designer environments where you're selling very expensive things. You have to basically read somebody's mind to make them spend their $5,000 or $6,000 on a dress or whatever. So that's kind of what cannabis is to me, you know? It's kind of like, wow, like I'm going to have this experience. And I kind of like refer to it more as like ceremony almost. Like this is like we're sitting down. I want to settle into this moment and I want to just be here in this experience.
You know what? And we're all moving into this new experience. You know, we're all, I guess, young enough now, no matter how old you are, to see weed become legal in this country on several in several states, whether it be medical or recreational. Or it's all medical, but we're watching it all become legal, and it's so dope. But there's still some ramifications behind that, you know. And there's a lot of people who actually fear the ending of prohibition and in fearing what that could mean for the legacy market. Like, what do you feel like? What do you think ending prohibition would mean for people of color?
I think it's kind of like, I don't want to get too intellectual on this, but I kind of feel like it's like,
yeah, please do. You can.
I kind of feel like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna bring up something very awful. Okay, you know what Donald Trump did? Okay, we had Barack Obama, then we had Donald Trump, and then we had Joe Biden. Okay, Barack Obama was able to become president off of the people's donations. Mm. That's how much it costs to become president.
Oh, yeah. President
Donald Trump raised the price of becoming president, right? And now everybody's has to either find a way to meet that same benchmark or don't run, right? And I feel like the cannabis industry almost has the potential to start to become that way, especially for, you know, people who don't have $2 million of cash to run a dispensary.
Oh, true. Yeah, we have that conversation often here on the podcast, that there's so many people who can't actually get involved because of the benchmark that they have.
Legally, though. Yeah. Legally.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they can't be involved. DC is a really interesting place where there's like a gray market. And
let's not talk about DC. I always said DC was my favorite time to go to, especially when they had gifting. Like, I thought that was the most ingenious thing ever. I wish we could all just gift everybody something. Like, hey, buy this shirt and I'll give you an eighth. You know, I wish we could do that. But
yeah. So what does that mean? And what I look at too is like, there's the story of the war on drugs, right? It created all these ecosystems that it feeds into, and it starts really with school, education, police, cops in schools, and the relationship that we have with substances, down to our diet, sugars and salts and things like that. You know, is this gonna kill me or whatever? But I feel like with people of color, there's this conversation that has to happen, just sort of around your quality of life and enjoying cannabis at the same time.
Yeah. How do you feel like the ending of prohibition would affect the legacy market? You know, because there's a lot of people who are, you talk about comfortable, they're comfortable doing what they're doing. They don't need to be in a dispensary. They don't need a license. They don't even aspire to do that. What do you feel like the end of prohibition would do to the legacy market?
I don't think it's going to do anything. I think the best thing to do, I mean, there's a reference point, you know, for the end of prohibition when it comes to liquor, for example.
True.
You know, so, I mean, and I've thought about it, but I haven't dove into the information in regards to what did the end of prohibition for liquor look like for so many, for the folks who were able to run, you know, back of the house sort of businesses with liquor.
I feel like it was, and again, you're right, we got to do the best research possible, but I feel like what it did was shut down a lot of people who were doing the speakeasies, doing the bootlegging, they were doing those behind the scenes clubs. It shut down a lot of those people, I believe. Mm-hmm. I hope it doesn't do the same thing to legacy market, because I feel like legacy is, there's some people who are, even to this moment, they're way more comfortable going to a weed man than they are going to a dispensary. Like I say, even now, like I have a niece who's 12. I feel like she's the demographic for dispensaries. Not saying she should go to one right now, but I'm not your market, because I'm still used to going to a guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still used to calling my person. I've been to dispensaries, and I feel like it's kind of a sterile experience to go to most of them.
Yeah, I mean, my first dispensary experience, it was like we didn't speak the same language, right? Because I'm like, I was basically looking for CBD at the time, right? I just wanted something like super low key. Like, I don't want to be out my mind. I just want to really enjoy cannabis right now. And the lady didn't know what to sell me at all, you know? And we're like, well, do you have like Reggie or something? You know, like, how can we keep this conversation as simple as possible so you can give me what I want, you know? And I still feel like we got too high.
Yeah, and no disrespect to dispensaries, we definitely need it. But my experience, like I say, I feel like I'm not your target demographic. Your target demographic are 12-year-olds right now, like people you need to really bring into this space where they get used to, almost like how my nephew, who's now 23, you're used to seeing a black president at this point. I mean, aside from Trump, you grew up in an era where you saw black presidents. I didn't. Like my niece is growing up in a space now between every state she goes to, there's a good chance there's going to be a dispensary on the street. There's going to be a good chance there's a more open conversation about cannabis. That's your dark target. I'm not your target.
Yeah.
Like I'm not your target market, dog.
Yeah, and I live in Virginia too. And Virginia, the way they treat liquor is like the state runs the liquor stores. Nobody sells
y'all got
liquor.
ABC stores?
Yeah.
They had them
and
in
I've
North
never
Carolina
seen that
too.
before. I'm from Arizona where you buy liquor from anywhere. You can buy, from anywhere. So it was kind of this interesting, like, well, the state is, why wouldn't they want the same thing with cannabis?
Boy, look, my first experience with the ABC store blew my mind too, because I grew up in a place where you had liquor stores and you can just go buy liquor at regular places. I didn't know y'all had blankets places. Like you let this whole state run your liquor? Like that's wild as hell, man.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too.
So it'd be crazy to see that in cannabis, like an ABC cannabis store, like Georgia running it. I don't want the state of Georgia to run cannabis.
It's going to be expensive, and it's not going to be inclusive.
No, not
you know
at
what
all.
I mean?
Not at all.
Which is foolish. But part of me has faith in the fact that cannabis is the people's drug, it's the people's plant. Like you can't really, it's the system itself cannot function in this like discord of, well, we got this over here and if you ain't got that, then you can't have it.
Yeah.
I just don't think cannabis lends itself to being able to function in that kind of system.
No, cannabis is one of the few things where the stereotype will be the same no matter who you put into place. Like it could be black, Latino, it could be white, whatever. It's still gonna be shaggy. You know what I'm saying? Like from Scooby Doo, like people will still give you that same view. So I feel like it's dope to see this conversation expand. It's dope to see it grow the way it's growing. But I do have my worries at times because I do feel like it's going to push out the legacy market, which is going to really affect a lot of people whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Right now, the topic du jour is psychedelics, though. I'm loving this conversation as well because you talk about something I was never sure black people are ever going to have a conversation about. But man, now we got people like, shout out to my good friend the Cannabis Fairy. You got black people trip. You got huge communities now who are not only just explaining psychedelics, but explaining why it's dope for them with their mental and physical health.
Yeah.
Speak to us about psychedelics. Like, when was your first time experiencing?
Psychedelics, well, I was camping and it was lovely.
Why does that sound like such a stereotypical moment? like I was camping and this is how this happened.
It was so much love, It was just like, hey, like this is a safe, I think, and that's the thing about I've loved so far about what I've encountered in psychedelics is that there is a sort of consciousness about, well, what does it mean to be safe in this space? Because the unsafe stories are the ones they told you in school when they said don't do drugs, right? So it's kind of like, well, I mean, maybe there's another way we've got to tell this story. So harm reduction is something that I appreciate greatly. So far from my experience encountering the psychedelics community, but that's the environment I was in the first time I tried psilocybin, right? And the people around me were just really supportive. They had more experience than me. And there's these tricky corners of like, the person that there's these really tricky corners, right? Because it's medicine, right? So there's dosages involved.
Yeah.
And the people that you're with, they may or may not have the proper knowledge about dosing and things like that. So the most important thing is self-safety first, right? And not getting into too experimental of an environment to where you can't be well and enjoy your experience.
Were you scared your first time?
No, my second time was way more intense than the first because it was more like a hero dose. But I believe my setting is not like the room that I'm in.
Now wait, you hero dose. That's when you like take 3 mushrooms at a time or something like that?
It's really it's personal, Okay. Some people it's the biggest dose I've ever taken. It was the first time that I felt like I was having like I was having a trip. It was like, oh, that looks pink and purple and green and I just feel so great. And but I was on an adventure that day. It was not like I was sitting in the house or sitting at the camp and just sitting there enjoying my experience. It was more like Bruh, like that was not, it wasn't something out of a storybook. It wasn't bad. It was just a really like, almost like me strapping myself in. Like your set and setting is your state of mind and your physical well-being. And that's what it is. But I feel like Black people can relate to that in a lot of ways. You know, it's not always about everything around you being cushiony.
No.
But, you know, what can you do to provide yourself the highest level of well-being?
You know, man, I would have been so scared. Like my biggest fear about doing is, I'm speaking about mushrooms in particular. Like I haven't done acid or anything like that either.
Yes, me neither.
But I've been so nervous about getting stuck in a high. You know, like I feel like I've heard bad stories about people who were tripping too long and stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't ever want to get stuck. So I feel like that's probably my biggest hindrance to ever trying something like that. I need to get out of that though. I need to stop being a sucker.
Well, it's fine, you know. There's a cessation, like it does. Like there's the day you take the dose, then there's 24 hours after you taking your dose, and then there's 36 hours after you're taking your dose, and you're still there, but you're just sort of coming down from that peak of that experience. But there's this great community on Instagram, and absolutely just we've had this amazing conversation centered around just what does it mean to like, and they use more psychedelics than I will ever use, you know, because I mean, I have friends who do, right? Like festival stuff and tabs of acid and stuff. That's just not me, you know. I'm like the folk, like we just gonna keep it real simple. But you know, they have a lot of insight as to, you know, how to move safely through this space.
I'd be terrified, but I'm trying to learn more, and that's why I do have guests like yourself on here to speak a little bit more with more education about tripping, because I'm telling you right now, I'm terrified. And I've been offered, I got pills in my house right now. You know, we get, as you see, you got a gift of gummies. I get gifts of all kind of things. Oh man, I'm so terrified of trying one of them one day and just waking up and not getting out of it. And feeling like, see, now you told yourself.
Well, you'll never not get out of it. But it's almost like, I think, and what makes it effective, right, in terms of use for like things like anxiety and depression, is that it's like it expands part of your mind, right? Especially around these points of like tension or trauma.
Yeah.
So once you expand, you can't go back. You can't. If you do, then you're just like re-traumatizing yourself, which is really interesting, which is almost why psychedelics, the conversation is really advanced. It's really advancing very quickly, especially because I think Canada has a lot to do with it too. But it's advancing very quickly, and it's like, this can't become the medical industrial complex. You know what I mean? Because the way the medical industrial complex functions is almost counterintuitive to everything regarding plant medicine, because it's like you're in a constant state of treating symptoms.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to let you do this sort of harm to yourself, and then we're just going to come and fix the runny nose. But that's not what it's about at all. It's about transforming beyond that to where you really don't even need the drug anymore.
Do you feel like it helps create with creativity?
I think so, because because of internal blocks and things like that. But you know, part of where I'm coming from on the conversation is really transforming those stories around creators and any substance, right? Because there are so many stories like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, and they just died because they were using drugs, you know? But the truth of it is that, like, what does that look like? What does wellness look like in this space? Yeah. What does it look like to be safe and create? What does it look like to live a long life in this space? You know what I mean? Because that's sort of, I think, more aligned with like, you know, the reason. I don't think anybody did that on purpose. I'm gonna intentionally like end it, and maybe it did, but I still think that those are archetypes of drugs use that have to be transformed, you know, and they take time. And people are scared to say they use drugs because there is a certain level of safety that nobody can give you but yourself, right? Yeah. And nobody wants to feel that vulnerable. But I feel like at the same time, it's only a matter of time.
Why do you feel like this is becoming more of a conversation when it comes to people of color?
Because we love psychedelics. We've always loved psychedelics. Like, the stories my dad tells me about his drug use, I'm like shocked. Like, bro, you was like, 17 in Fayetteville taking acid. I would never guess. I would never have guessed in my life, you know? But then there's this we have the identity piece of it. And the thing is about psychedelics and any other kind of substance is that you have to sort of transcend the identity. You can't be stuck in being black, or you won't even really connect with this like higher level of consciousness that you align with when you're elevated. And the plant itself is neutral. It does not care. It's not here to make you feel good or bad. It's about, you know, what you're bringing to the plant. It's like this handshake. Like, okay, here we go. Like, if you're feeling nutty today, I can't fix that for you. Like, but we'll see what the relationship and the biodynamics are like, right?
I feel like one thing when it comes to psychedelics and anything, actually even weed, we in our community just look at it as drugs. You know, and especially when you look at generations, like I feel like with cannabis has really been a generational conversation. Like from my mother to me to my nephew to my niece, those are 4 different generations of people down the same line who have drastically different views of what cannabis is. My mother still looks at it as just plain a drug.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in our community who still look at it as a drug. And if you ever said out your mouth that I just popped a mushroom, I just did that, they looking at you like they about to put you in rehab immediately.
Yeah.
You know, so we still got to fight those kind of stigmas because that's a conversation we need to have amongst our entire all of us, like all of our generations need to sit down and just be like, hey, there's weed and now there's also this that we could talk about.
Yes, but people always want to attach when it comes to the stories. The crack epidemic is always attached to black people.
Yes.
You know, it's never like, you know,
they made it our narrative.
Exactly. And so I think that story has a lot to do with why our parents feel unsafe about drugs in general, you know, because we saw so much. I feel like black people saw a lot, and there's so much evidence of the harm that was done that why would anybody feel comfortable? Why would any black people feel? And then there's the whole conversation about like respectability, you know, and black exceptionalism. And it gets real weird when you start getting like that bougie and you're talking about drugs, you know.
As if we've never done them. You know what? Like what's the show that's out right now? Our Kind of People. I don't know if you've read the book, but Our Kind of People about black elitists. Like, okay. And I was just thinking about Martha's Vineyard. I've been to Martha's Vineyard plenty of times in my life, and you talk about some people who do some drugs. You know what I'm saying? like some black folks in the Inkwell who do some drugs.
Yeah, rich black kids are the first ones I've ever known to like be doing cocaine and shit like that in high school.
Oh yeah.
I was shocked then, and I'm still shocked when I think about it.
You know, that's so funny. Like I remember the first time I saw a black person do cocaine. I remember being frozen. Like, oh shit, that happens. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know he did that. I mean, I know I see the news, but I didn't know people really did that shit. Nah, they do it recreationally, like in a club, just hit that out. And I was like, damn, let me put my blunt out, I guess, because I don't know what else about to come out. Let me just get up out your section.
Yeah. Yes. I think all a part of that story, but so much. This whole thing is happening where it's like growth time, and it's time to expand beyond those identities and those stories and those archetypes. You know, like, man, the things that came out of the war on drugs that just irk me. I'm just gonna go off 1 second. Like the pimp and prostitute archetype. That is an archetype that came out of the war on drugs. You know what I mean? Like I really got to do this so that I can do this, and you're gonna get this like abusive relationship centered around substances and money and. Yeah. I just think it's fascinating, but I also think that it's what makes the culture at the same time.
Blunts or papers? What do you use?
I like tobacco.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? That's a first. like
really?
I've heard somebody just proudly say, "I'm a tobacco person." I told you I'm the folk man. Yeah. So you roll up a leaf. I like tinctures, but I'm not biased. I generally use papers more. Okay.
But maybe because it's 2021, you know, because I'm not in college anymore. We don't have to use backwoods. No, we're not doing that.
Girl, I'm so scared to use. You know, I still feel like I'm learning how to actually roll the paper. Like you talk about rolling the blunt and all that other shit. I'm pro at that. I could do it driving. Like I could do it blindfolded. I could roll up one. Rolling the paper to me somehow is so intricate and so delicate. I just feel like I don't know what to do.
It's a skill. It's an actual skill.
Yeah, it's an actual skill. You see people get super judgmental about your rolling paper skills when papers come out. People get super judgmental about that.
And the ones that are the most tough are like, it's like, you know, like white boys. Like, I mean, get some rolling bouquets. Like, don't use those. You know?
Oh, we got bouquets here. That's what's up. Actually, we got a pack.
We're on point right now.
Shout to Bouquet. Yeah, Bouquet is one of our sponsors. Matter of fact, we've been testing out a new segment called How You Roll. We watch people roll up using bouquet papers, man. Yeah, man. Watch people roll up bouquet papers. So when it comes to we've actually had a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we ran the gamut of things, but there's so much other stuff that goes along, and I feel like one thing we should expand a lot more on is wellness. When we start thinking about psychedelics, there's people who really I've had episodes about this, you know what I'm saying, where people speak about just how they need to use it in order to keep their mental sanity together.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about the wellness aspect when it comes to psychedelics?
Yeah. For me, the way that I approach wellness with psychedelics is more of like a psycho-spiritual relationship. I think there are a few things that are really essential, like moving forward for everybody in terms of just reducing harm or trauma and having plant-based experiences. Yeah. One of them is like recognizing your triggers, right? Because we speak English, and so I've noticed with the people that I know that there are triggers that are almost built into the culture too, but to our language, and those triggers are also built into our wounds, our abandonment wounds, our inner child wounds, which are all really, really incredibly important, because part of what makes folks so able to get beyond things like the idea of addiction, right, is to really get to the root of what makes them feel like there's no other solace or comfort besides the substance, right? Or even the idea of escapism. Like, I'm going to use this to escape feeling like this, or to escape the state of mind that I'm in. But really, wellness is like you have to face the thing. You have to go and face the monster or whatever it is, you know, and get to the other side. And that's what I'm about. That's all that I'm about. And I'm really I'm like holding space for Gen Z right now. But they're still like at party drug phase. Like it's not really, they're not at the next level of the conversation.
What would you choose? Would you choose weed over say psychedelics right now?
Well, weed is a psychedelic.
Oh, true. You did say that. You did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, and that was the other thing that I was going to say. Cognition and like neurodiversity are so important, because even when you think about the wellness space without cannabis, right? Because some of the people like Dr. Laila Africa and Jewel Pookrum and all of them, they would be like, don't even use cannabis. It should just fries your brain, man. They kind of have like this story. But Adis Latham has this really wonderful perspective of like, you know, and this is my like dream goal, like juice your fresh plant. And drink the juice of your cannabis. Don't light it on fire, because we know the relationship with your firing off toxins or whatever, which, I mean, I like that sometimes, you know? But at the same time, like, there are levels of wellness that we haven't even got to yet, and Black people are going to be the first people to get there. Because it's, as far as the legacy or the relationship with the plant goes, that's just the relationship that we have for whatever reason, right? And the origins of the plant, it comes from Black lands. It comes from places of highly melanated people, whether you want to call them, you know, Indians or, you know, but the lands that they're around, these are highly melanated people. There's a whole different dynamic of relationship. And when you talk, and then we have to challenge some of the things, conventional knowledge that we know, you know, like we're talking about the medical use, but we can't look at the science that's built around the white man's biodynamics, you know, white men and white women. If they're the standard for wellness and well-being, then how they relate to the plant, it's not going to be the same for me. No. You know, and that's what Jewel Pookrum and Dr. Africa had been talking about for so long, and now it's sort of like has to become a part of this space in ways that, you know, we're pioneering.
What a deep dive we took tonight.
Yes.
What a deep dive we took tonight. If somebody wants to learn more about you or get into some of the things that you do offer, how can they contact you?
Yeah, so the best way to contact me, of course, you can always find me on Instagram.
That's a fact. Yeah, she found us. Yeah, that's an absolute fact.
But my cannabis like thought piece is called Canna Black, CANNABLK. And that's sort of where I sort of just sound off on so many of the things that I mentioned here. Just sort of taking more of a thought leadership position. Like, I'm not really here for the bread. You know what I mean? There's no shortage of ways to make money. I don't need cannabis to make money, but it does make me think. You know, you had high thoughts on here not too long ago, and my high thoughts are really like centered around, well, what does wellness look like in this space? You know, so that's probably the best place to find me. But there you can also find my link to my personal Instagram, which is more complicated to spell. So just go to Canna Black.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming through. Thank you for surviving Afropunk and coming to pull up with us.
My pleasure.
We got our vendors here today, Carpe Diem. So definitely come check out what they have. They got some dope edibles, and they about to give us some dope tacos. Hey, tell your mom. We're about to give us some dope tacos, and yeah, we about to kick back. So please kick back with us, roll up one, and kick it with a higher level of conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. That's Cash Color Cannabis, and this episode is sponsored by Pure Life.